the ETs, far from trying to start World War III in a nuclear war, which is what this nonsense at the hearing said, even the most advanced stealth fighters, the most advanced weapon systems, etc., those are generations below what are existing in these covert illegal programs based on reverse engineering extraterrestrial devices. And at least 80-90% of everything out there that are called a UAP or UFO is ours. We have a big show today because we're going to have John Stewart with us talking about a case from the 90s involving a possible ET that was in captivity. But before that, we want to go through some of the information that was on the hearing that occurred on Tuesday in Washington. So there have been a lot of questions about it, and I want to just review that. And John, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me, and thank you to all of your listeners and viewers. I appreciate the opportunity of coming on and talking about my journey. Thank you.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, we'll get into the facts of that. But let's do a little quick recap. I was at the reception for the members of Congress and some folks the night before, and I knew there'd be some kind of videotape. Mr. Burleson, Congressman Burleson, informed me that he had some footage, and we'll put that up as I'm speaking about it in the finished interview. But basically what it shows is a drone chasing a spherical object that, and then another drone fires a Hellfire missile, which apparently, as it approaches the object, breaks up, and some of the debris go along with the sphere. And this came from a source. I had known of this event some time ago, about a month or two ago. It happened off the coast of Yemen in October of last year, 2024. So unfortunately, the commentary on it is completely off the mark. One of the problems with these hearings is that there aren't any subject experts at them. And I will be blunt about this. So Ms. Luna, who's the chair of that task force, Congressman Luna, asked everyone if this was something that could be anything we have. And of course, all of them said no. But the people on the panel were a UFO journalist who has no scientific credentials or information on the subject. And the others were ones who had been present at incidents that were passing, but weren't read into covert programs, and most certainly had no knowledge of the reverse engineered tech or even the very advanced exotic technologies which Lockheed Skunk Works and Northrop Grumman and Raytheon and EG&G and other companies have. Now, with the data that's in that video, I can't tell if that's a non-human object or man-made, but the way it behaved and the fact that it was something that didn't just vanish and disappear as these missiles closed in on it would indicate that it was man-made. So an extraterrestrial and interstellar technology literally will look like it dematerializes right in front of you because they shift into quote unquote another dimension, but they just go beyond the speed of matter and light and subatomic particles. And so it would just not be there. So I would say that the evidence would point to this being a man-made object. Now, a man-made object from where? We do know that, for example, the anti-gravity triangles, which have been made by Northrop Grumman and Raytheon over the years that are electrogravitic or a so-called gravity control effect, those also have been spotted in Russia and also in Iran and in China. And there's a good reason to believe that the sort of undeclared arms race involving reverse engineering advanced ET technologies is most certainly not limited to the United States. Now, this brings up a question of whether or not It matters what country it's from, because as I understand the organization engaged in this subject, it's a transnational corrupt organization. It's a organized crime syndicate that's global. And it has operations in every country in the world, subterranean, that goes off the radar of the leadership of these other countries. And I know that's true in the United Kingdom, the United States, Australia, the other advanced Western countries, France and whatnot. Now, the question is that the situation in Iran or Russia or China? I don't know. I will say I don't know if that's the same dynamic. It very well could be. And that's something that has yet to be, in my mind, determined. But I can say with authority, with firsthand knowledge and authority, that the technologies that sphere represented very well could be of human manufacture, but from what origin and what terrain, let's say what geopolitical area, I don't know. Now, the geopolitical area, say the boundaries of Iran, Russia, China, US, are pretty much irrelevant to the organization running covert UAP, UFO programs, period. They don't even care. They really don't. So then the question becomes a bigger question. Who ordered the firing on it? Right? Because one of the scandals that's going to attend this, and I know this is the DOD, the Department of Defense concern, is anything that is more advanced than what the legal constitutional military has, let's call it that, or what Clinton called Team Blue, the regular military, even the most advanced stealth fighters, the most advanced weapon systems, etc. Those are generations below what are existing in these covert illegal programs based on reverse engineering, extraterrestrial devices, and advanced exotic technologies dealing with trans-dimensional physics and anti-gravity and all of that. So then the question is, who ordered a Hellfire missile fired at this thing? What was the chain of command and why? And was this object interfering with our operations in near Yemen, or was it also something that was launched by the left hand that doesn't know what the right hand's doing? In other words, we have recently debriefed a Green Beret who was in a sensitive black operation in Syria a few years ago, where he observed the Tic Tac sitting ready to be deployed. All right, and it was man-made. It's man-made, and it's an unmanned reconnaissance anti-grav device. And we've known this for many, many years. Devices similar to that have been seen and documented all the way back. If you look at our disclosure, an illustrated history book we just released, all the way back to 1967 in Pennsylvania, right? So the question is, was this an object that was a reconnaissance object after what happened in Israel on October 7th that was deployed by aspects of a secret covert governmental program, military program, or some transnational operation that the regular military doesn't know about? Now, then there's another analysis, and that is, why would these things be deployed where they know they're going to be detected in a sensitive area of military operations if it's not extraterrestrial, which I don't think this is? I think it would be done for a number of reasons. One is to tickle Team Blue, the conventional military, to see what their reaction would be. And this is part of how they test their adversaries who are in the legal government of the United States and other countries. Because you're looking at really two governments. You're looking at the government of the president and the Congress and the normal military and CIA, and then you're looking at an extremely unacknowledged, black, illegal, unsanctioned project that deals with UAPs. So this gets to be very complicated. It's like a war game. And, so there are many things more. There are more things not known about this. I'm here giving you sort of an overview, a sort of informed analysis of what it may have been and why it was done. But so far, we don't have anything from the national military in the United States as to who ordered the strike with the Hellfire missile, why, and what, if anything, was this object doing that interfered with conventional military, and so forth. My concern about this is that because members of Congress, and certainly these sort of baby step hearings they're doing, which, by the way, are not even 1% of what we presented in 2001 at the National Press Conference. Those hearings are absolutely going forward without an adequate fund of knowledge by either the members of Congress or the people who are on the panel. The people
Absolutely
are just woefully inadequate to even discuss the issue, frankly. And then you have someone like Miss Luna, who is, been pulled into sort of, let's just say, some counterintelligence operations in ufology, and she's being very, very much misguided. And I don't know that she's aware of it. She may be, but I don't think so. I don't think she knows the extent to which she's being misled. Now, I think other members of the panel, Moskowitz, I've spoken to some other members of Congress who attended, as well as, of course, Congressman Burleson, who is very astute and is much more developed in his understanding of this. But the chair of this task force is Miss Luna, who somehow, always wants to posit this and kept saying it was scary. Well, I'll tell you what's scary. It's scary that our regular military and members of Congress don't know what these objects are, and they think that anything zipping around in our atmosphere is alien, when it certainly isn't. At least 80-90% of everything out there that are called a UAP or UFO is ours. And this is now being understood on a very high level of law enforcement and national security in the United States and the executive branch, but the Congress seems to be lagging in their understanding of this.
Yeah, I think, Dr. Greer, I ran for Congress in 2000, and I don't say that to boast or brag or anything, to the fact that, I have a little bit of a pedigree and knowledge of congressional hearings. And I think when you summon 4 or 5 people, one of them being a reporter, all of them with stories, no documents, and then you put forth a very curious and queer video of an object that we don't know. You don't have anybody from the DOD or Jane's Defense to tell us what we're looking at. You're firing a Hellfire missile. As crazy as this sounds, I'm actually very familiar with that armament. That is something that you would deploy against a slow-moving car, a stationary object, a tank, to some degree. Why you would deploy that at a moving target still beckons the rationale of that. And I believe this Hellfire was the ones where actual blades come out and actually try to slice through its target, and not doing a very effective job at this. I could not agree with you more. We've had this discussion about the fast moving and the tic-tac. You don't deploy unknown flying objects around men and women who are serving our country, who are on who are on ships, who are on planes, whose safety and lives are in danger. You don't fly objects into their theater of campaign without telling them and notifying them. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I could not agree more. And to bring that video up where everyone is sitting there stupefied, and the most, without sounding harsh, the most critical statement of it is, wow, that's scary. That's a little troubling to me, and I think they could have done a little bit more on explaining what we think this was, what was being fired at it.
Problem,
it was ridiculous.
No, but they didn't have anyone there who's a subject expert.
No,
see,
they didn't have Jane's, the DOD.
And people take issue with me. The problem with this whole subject is that just because you had a sighting in the military, does not make you an expert. Just because you have a badge, because you worked in an office at the Pentagon, does not make you an expert on this subject.
That's correct, sir.
The lack of subject experts for these committees is a huge problem, and we're trying to rectify that.
Yeah.
But And it's one of these areas where I never use the word ufology because there's no such thing. There's no credentialed program. Now, I happen to have spent 35 years drilling down on this and have debriefed over 1,000 whistleblowers and sources and studied it, and been out in the field and had contact with the actual ET objects. But most people have no real foundation of having any informed knowledge of it. And until they start having that kind of information presented, it's just going to add confusion. So now there was one other thing that was, I think, rather upsetting about this, and this was a case presented by this journalist about an event in Russia, Soviet Union, that he claimed could have instigated World War III. So I want to unpack this a little bit in a
Sure.
nuclear war. This is more of the false narrative where you flip everything on its head. So let me explain how really good counter disinformation works and counterintelligence works. You take a real case and you spin it. This is the spinmeisters. And what the spinmeisters do, and I'll give you a great example. The night before I met, I hadn't seen him for years, one of the whistleblowers we had in 2001, Bob Salas, who was a captain who was involved at the silo in Minot, North Dakota, where the nuclear weapons were taken offline by a UFO that came over. And years later, after that, he got intercepted by people who then took his story and some others and spun it into an alien threat against our nuclear arsenal.
Right.
And an alien. So the threat narrative is the only narrative that will allow on Fox News, CNN, 60 Minutes, whatever, Joe Rogan. And that threat narrative is what the cabal, this transnational criminal organization, wants. Now, here, what really happened, he and others told me that he felt that ETs were trying to tell us, don't go to nuclear war. This was in the darkest days of the Cold War.
Right.
And if you do, it'll destroy all life on Earth, and we can slow that down. And the same thing, by the way, that happened here in the United States and the United Kingdom with nuclear weapons facilities happened in the Soviet Union, because these interstellar civilizations have been trying to stop us from destroying the world and ourselves and them by slowing down this arms race starting in the mid-40s. This is why the very first major sightings happened in the modern era in around White Sands and around
the Trinity site. Yeah.
The Trinity site, but also Roswell. Roswell was the only nuclear weapons storage facility on Earth in 1947. So the ETs, far from trying to start World War III in a nuclear war, which is what this nonsense at the hearing said, they've been trying for 80 years to do the opposite.
Right.
Right. So
I agree. I totally agree.
Where you take one fact and you can split it, and you can take it. Here's the truth of it, is that they've been trying to warn us and stop us from doing this and blowing up the world. And then you have the buffoonery of the UFO subculture going, oh, they're doing things that could lead to World War III. No, they're actually trying to stop this madness and have been for 80 years. So I think this is one of the real problems, is you have people with these agendas, and who's going to benefit from that? Now, let me give you in contrast. We have in our archive, if anyone wants to see it, a Colonel Anatoly Sitnov, 1979, near Kharkiv, Ukraine. And there was we have the testimony of this colonel who was present at an event where there were nuclear weapons stored in this area. And this is in our archive. We'll put a link to it so you can see it, those of you listening. And basically what happened is that there was a nuclear weapon that was overheating. And we weren't really aware of it. The ETs were. A UFO came in, and some of the guards were put sort of in suspended animation, which we've heard happening before. Right. And there were a few ETs that went in suits and went in and fixed that problem, prevented that weapon from overheating and blowing up, because had it detonated, it would have looked like a launch or an attack, and it could have led to World War III. There are many accounts where the ETs, in fact, have done things like I just described. And this is from a military officer in the Soviet Union who was there. And these sort of cases prove the fact that on the opposite of what Knapp was saying, where they're doing things that could cause us to go into nuclear war, they're actually doing things to stop it.
Agreed.
For 80 years.
Yeah.
So I think that this is exactly the kind of spin meistering that would benefit who? The military-industrial complex.
Of course.
Right? You create this massive threat out there, and therefore let's get more trillions of dollars to go to these robber barons under a false pretext.
Fight the new boogeyman.
This is what I wrote about in 1999 when I wrote the paper and warned that, and I called it the disclosure that serves secrecy. In other words, a disclosure that would serve the secret agenda of this group of people who have been lying to the American people and staging false events for 80 years. And it's mostly a psyop. So, the big problem with this is that I'm the guy who started the Disclosure Project in the 90s. But what I see happening is that disclosure is being hijacked by this kind of spin by people who are actually kind of carrying the message of this crime syndicate.
Well said.
That's that.
Yeah, I agree. You have to if you want to spin the narrative that extraterrestrials are here to destroy us and cause our destruction, show me. I did, Dr. Gray. I think you would agree. Show me in 80 years where that has happened. All we have are stories, a lot of anecdotal, but stories nonetheless, of extraterrestrials, interdimensional, whatever they may be, doing the exact opposite. So again, you're right. It's the new boogeyman. Keep the money flowing to the DOD, and I have a fundamental problem with that, as I'm sure you do too.
Yeah, but it's not even going to the mainline military. Those guys, look, having briefed generals and heads of the Defense Intelligence Agency and the people like that, admirals and others who are in sitting positions at the Pentagon, they don't know anything about this. And this is what most people don't realize. The people who are read in are part of the criminal operations. The ones who don't, you could be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and you're not read in. This is a mistake everyone makes. The first CI director I briefed wasn't read in, and nor was the president. It was back in the Clinton era. And so I think people don't realize that there's two tracks here. Yes. One is the very deep cover illegal track, and there are some CI directors who know and some don't. Right. It depends on where they've come from.
Correct.
But they're part of this. They're under a non-official cover status, NOC status. So I think in this case, the other problem is when you look at the history of our thermonuclear weapons, when we detonated the first one, it puts out an electromagnetic pulse, but it also has within it a scalar signal that sort of rips through space-time faster than the speed of light and disrupts interstellar and extraterrestrial and transdimensional travel and communications. So this is the other part of this that no one talks about. And you really have to do a deep dive into the scalar technologies and electromagnetic pulse effects to understand why when we do detonate these objects, these bombs, it causes a huge problem, not just here, but elsewhere in the universe. And I think this was something that Oppenheimer and Teller and others did not anticipate until it happened. And then they realized, oh, well,
like a supernova or an exploding star that we see 1,000 years later. Can I ask you a question? Do you think that the nuclear tests, especially the ones in New Mexico and Trinity and whatnot, do you think that is still reverberating through the solar system and the Milky Way or beyond, or do you think that it has a firewall that it stops? I would be very interested to know that, because if it's going to go like continue like a lights of us seeing a star that exploded, and we see it 1,000 years later, is the planet still going to be sending out this massive? The kids have the nuclear bomb. Well, what is your take on that?
Oh yeah, because anything moving at the speed of light moves at 186,000 miles per second,
right?
Which is the speed of light. That would be the electromagnetic pulse. But the scalar is more like quantum entanglement. It's a longitudinal. It's not a waveform. It's a point that goes out in a straight line, and it goes transdimensionally, virtually instantaneously. And that's where you get this. This is why I always say a big red flag, warning, flashing light went over the Earth in 1945, and then got worsened with the thermonuclear weapons of when we detonated in the early 50s, the first hydrogen or thermonuclear, which is much more destructive than an atomic bomb of the 40s.
Were those the Bikini Atoll ones?
Yes, those. But yes, and that's when we had the nine UFOs that flew over the Capitol. Remember,
right.
That was the ETs sending a warning. This is not good.
Yeah.
And we know this. Now the problem is when you're dealing with people who are very busy, whether it's the president or members of Congress, kind of people I deal with, they don't have time to drill down on all this nuance, and they don't have any. Here's the other problem with these hearings. They don't have, I know for a fact, there are no staff experts, not one. Now, Congressman Burleson has Mr. Grush, but Mr. Grush is a young man who just learned and got involved with this a very few years ago. When I first met him, as maybe he was in his mid-30s, and really was not someone who was read in and had studied the matter. So there aren't any really, there's not a group of very experienced scientists and subject experts advising them. And since they have no staff full-time dedicated to it, and they have no time themselves to drill down deeply, these mistakes are going to happen. And I recommended that they form a select committee that gets funded, that has subject experts and not just buffoonery, and that they really get to drill down on this. But unfortunately, that was supposed to happen even at the Senate Intelligence Committee level when I first started providing them information nearly 4 years ago. But that funding got blocked. The Select Committee, the House Oversight folks wanted, that got blocked. Are
you talking about a committee that studied like the JFK assassination or?
Select Committee, meaning that it has its own subpoena power. Yes. It has its own funding. It has a staff of experts to drill down. It's not an ad hoc. Remember what's going on now. Right. They're doing the best they can, Burleson and others, because they don't have any dedicated staff to this. Right. And there are no subject experts on the payroll, and they don't have any subpoena power. And my last comment about the hearings before we move on to your important case is that, aside from that, they also, unfortunately, have never been given the authorization to issue subpoenas like they should, because that now has to go through the chair of the House Oversight Committee, which would be Congressman Comer of Kentucky. And the chair can authorize that, but they are not doing subpoenas. Now, I have handed off to them, I don't know what, Raven may have 40, 50 names of people to be subpoenaed. Mm-hmm. We have people who are more consequential, way more consequential than any of the people who have been on these hearings that don't need a subpoena, but they won't call them because they're going to expose things that folks don't want to hear, basically. It's too much information. The information of people like Maureen Herrera, who saw the man-made UFO abducting people for human experimentation in Indonesia, et cetera, and so on. So, we have people who will go up there right now without a subpoena, but they won't call them. Instead, they're going to call a UFO journalist. Now, you go figure out what that's about, folks. I hate to tell you, but this is unbelievable. But now, on top of the ones who go without a subpoena, we have people who can be subpoenaed, who want to be subpoenaed.
Right.
But they want it. And I have handed off that information, and they won't subpoena any of them. So right now, I think the big action is going to be in law enforcement. It's going to be in investigations in the executive branch. But I'm hoping Congress will pick up the pace of this and have more consequential hearings with legitimate whistleblowers with subpoenas in the near future. That's what we're hoping for, and that's what we're recommending.
Yeah.